Intro. Hello everyone, and welcome to the very first video of the Poor Mana's Magic channel. On this channel, we are trying to use as many common and uncommons as we can to build competitive decks. This channel is for everybody who doesn't have the time or the money to grind the dailies or to pour into gems and gold, to get the packs, and to acquire the rares and mythics that so many people think are necessary to really enjoy this game, especially in an online format like Arena. So every week we're going to take a look at the meta. We're going to identify the kinds of cards that have the biggest impact in ranked, cards that are popping up the most, that have the most powerful board presence, and we're going to design some decks to combat that. We're then going to take these decks over the course of the week into the ranked queue, and we're going to see if we can have any measure of success with the very limited cards that we will have. A lot of the strategies are going to have some commonalities with Pauper format, with limited formats. We're really going to lean into synergies and combos, things that once you start building up a board presence can be very powerful without the need for a single card to come down and win you the game. We're really straying away from the S-type bomb cards, and we're going more towards those cards that can kind of sneak up on you. Might, in the right combination, be able to be very powerful. So I thought it might make sense, as we are looking at our little daily here, to maybe craft something around this. So you see we have a white and red daily. We need to cast 20 of these spells. So let's go into the deck builder and see what we can do with this. So with the knowledge that standard is very heavily black, heavily aggro, what can we make out of a red and white based deck? So first we'll go in and we'll turn off the rares and the uncommons. We'll make sure that any non-collected cards we are at least going to see, so we can tell if we want to craft anything with our uncommons and commons. And I often find it helpful to look at the multicolored cards. These tend to be the most powerful. They tend to be some of the most synergistic. So let's just take a look and see what we have. The first thing that sticks out to me is Baird Argivian Recruiter. And so this is going to play well in modified decks, in decks which you're giving your creatures +1/+1s or other kinds of buffs. Because at the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature that has a buff, insofar as its power is greater than its base power, you get to create a white soldier creature token. Now the downside with Baird is that it takes a little while to get going, and if you plop him down on turn 2, he instantly gets removed with his 2 toughness. Most shock type cards are going to get him, a cut down is going to get him. This might not be the most impactful or have the most staying power, but we'll keep him in mind. The next thing we see is the Mirror Shield Hoplite. So with the latest MOM set, we got this new keyword, backup. And what this means is when this creature comes into play, enters the battlefield, you can choose a target of another creature that you control to get whatever the ability of the card that came into play is. And so we'll take a look at some of those, but I'll put this over in our deck just to hold on to it for a couple beats. Looking at some of the other cards we have available to us. People who have been playing for a few rotations might remember how dominant Sunrise Cavalier could be in the right aggro deck. I think this is always a good card to have. It's a 3-mana, 3/3 with trample and haste, and it also plays a little bit with that night and day mechanic. And aside from that, we're really just looking into some of these Naya colors where we add green. Now, the thing to remember, especially when you're playing with commons and uncommons, is that 3-color decks are going to be nearly impossible to succeed with. Your mana base is going to be very slow. Everything is going to be a tap land when it comes in, and this is going to make it difficult to curve out. So you want to stick with, as much as possible, just 2 colors. So the most powerful cards I'm seeing here are the Hoplite and the Cavalier. We could either play into some sort of hasty type deck, a very much aggro deck, or we could go a little bit more aggro mid-range with a backup centered deck. But let's take a look and see what else we can have around that. So the first thing we're going to look up is the backup cards that we have available to us. And so this will mostly be a +1/+1 type deck. And obviously we have some of the better buffing cards when we add green, but we'll shy away from that for now. So we have Enduring Bondwarden, which is a great turn 1. When it dies, it puts its counters on another target creature, so it can buff itself, and then when it dies, buff something else. Means that you don't hurt as much when you put it down on turn 1. We also have some Vigilance. We have some Double Strike, some other keywords here that could be interesting. We have a backup with Flyer, although 5 mana for a 2/3 is a little slow for what we're looking to do. And this is all of it. These are the 10 white and red backup cards in the common and uncommon. Now, with rare, you get quite a few better ones, but that's not the world we live in, is it? So let's go ahead and see what kind of backup would exist in a green. And it looks like we have a couple more options here. Streetwise Negotiator could be really good. It assigns its damage equal to its toughness rather than its power. So it comes down as a functional 2/2, and if you put the backup on it, it becomes a 3/3. You can also use this to pump up your Enduring Bondwarden, which probably has a counter on itself to a 2/3, making it a 3/3. Not a bad thing at all. However, it seems like within the red and white, the backup mechanic is a little bit lacking. So let's go instead to an aggro version. We'll go ahead and pump all 4 copies of the Sunrise Cavalier in. So let's take a look at haste and see what we have available to us. Obviously, Phoenix Chick, Monastery Swiftspear, Kumano faces Kakkazan are very popular inclusions in any sort of red deck, and these are probably going to do us some good as well. So we'll go ahead and add these in, maybe just 2 of the Swiftspear for now, and we'll see what else we can find. So again, we're looking for aggro-based cards. We're looking for things that are going to go fast. Our deck isn't going to have a lot of power in it, so the faster we can pull through and take advantage of a small mishap on our opponent, the better. So another card I'm seeing here is Invigorating Hot Springs. And this is a green mana inclusive card, but it does come down on turn 3, and it's much easier in a 3-color deck to get the kind of mana you need by turn 3 instead of turn 1 or 2. So this is something maybe we could start to think about, especially alongside a card like Yavimaya Iconoclast, which is surprisingly good and plays very, very well with any sort of modified card. The Trample really does come into play. The 3/2, the little power focus there is really good. And you can blow by a lot of other cards, even in mono green if you need to. And if we combine that sort of thing with some instant speed trickery, like a shock type effect or a pump effect, it can probably be pretty effective. But as it is, I think we're going to stick even lower to the ground. I think we're going to add back our Swiftspears. We might add in another kind of flyer if we can find one. Oops, flying. Something I think with another keyword would probably be best. So I'm looking here at a Paratrooper, an Ambusher. I'm also looking at Swooping Lookout, which gives us Vigilance. I think these might be excellent places to start. So now that we have our 1, 6, 10, 12, 16 creature cards, let's start looking for a way to surprise our opponents with some trickery. So we're going to go into the instant and take a look at a few different buffs. So because we're more aggressive, we're not going to want as much removal, especially removal that we can't use to go face. So this is going to be damage-based removal. But if we do look there, Play with Fire is one of the better cards that we can use. So we're going to go ahead and add those in. Abrade is nice. Antagonize might be better. So this can turn our 1/1 Phoenix Chick into a 5/4 flyer. That means that if we were to draw all 4 of our Antagonizes and 1 Phoenix Chick, that puts our opponent on a 4-turn clock, and that is pretty good. So we'll add a couple of those. There might be better options. We're also seeing Lightning Strikes. 3 damage to face, never going to be a bad idea. We'll add some of those as well. What else do we have? Given that we have quite a few creature spells, I'm not opposed to putting in 1 or 2 larger damage-based spells like a Stoke the Flames. Usually, a card like this would be bad, even in a limited format. It would be 4 mana for 4 damage. That's not going to hit everything you might need to remove. However, if we are fast enough to get our opponent down to something around 8 or 10 life by the time the board gets clogged, our flyers, like Phoenix Chick and Swooping Lookout, and our damage-based removal, like Stoke the Flames or Lightning Strike, are really going to come in handy. So let's go ahead and keep a couple of those in. And we're not as much worried about our own life total. We don't really want to prioritize any sort of life gain. Proliferate would be interesting if we had more 1/1s, but we're not going to as of yet. Most of that will be in white and green. And maybe we need to look for a way to do some card sorting. So this would be something like giving a small buff and then also kind of sorting through the top of our cards. For that, maybe a combat trick like Blazing Crescendo might be good. It gives our target creature +3/+1 and lets us take a peek at the top card. In the late game, when we start getting down to only 1 or 2 cards in hand and maybe 3 to 6 mana, this is going to be a great card. We can get our attack in, we don't have to sacrifice losing a turn, and we can find something else to play out. And so I think between this and 2 more Stoke the Flames, start with 24 mana, just to make sure we don't get mana screwed. I think this is a pretty good place to start. And because we have so many 1 and 2 drops that we will need to play on curve, we're going to stick with just the basics for now. Okay, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Ooh, we have to change our little thumbnail image here, and so we'll do Antagonize, and let's go play a few games. Now we are going to go into the ranked queue because that's where I want to really make these kinds of decks work. Okay, we have our first opponent, Inaka. Faceless and intimidating, and it looks like we're going to be on the draw. We have a very strong turn 1 and turn 2 with some easy removal, so I think we go ahead and keep this. Plenty of lands. Turn 1, opponent plays a Blossoming Sands. Green-white could be a token deck, in which case they're going to have a big board presence, but they'll be on the ground, and our flyers might be very helpful. And so for this, I'm going to go ahead and play out our Kumano first. We'll get 1 damage in, and next turn we'll be able to pump up our Phoenix Chick to be a 2/2. Ooh, so opponent is on the green-white Toxic deck with a Slaughter Singer. So there's unlikely to be anything that pumps this up next turn, but we should look out for the 1 green card that makes targeting these very costly for us. For now, we'll go ahead and play another red. We'll bluff that we are only mono red, and we'll play out a Phoenix Chick. Because we're trying to go fast, we'll just get straight to attacking. So for turn 3, depending on what they get down on the board, we'll have a Sunrise Cavalier, we'll have a Stoke the Flames at the ready, we'll also have a couple combat tricks if we feel we need to. But obviously the Slaughter Singer is going to do some damage. Bloated Contaminator. Okay. So this is a little bit tricky. So we obviously have some adequate removal spells for that Bloated Contaminator, and we're probably going to want to use those. Next turn, the opponent will be doing 3 poison, 6 damage, and then they'll proliferate as well. So that will put them to 3, 5, 6 poison. I think in this case, it might be best to hold off on our removal and just keep pushing some damage. I think, depending on what we draw next turn, we could get pretty close. So let's go ahead and attack all. Actually, we'll just attack with Phoenix Chick, and we will hold up a Stoke the Flames. The idea here is we want to block the Slaughter Singer and hit the Contaminator with the Stoke the Flames if possible, which will make for a surprise 2/4/2 trade. Now if any buff kind of spell comes down, or any sort of removal spell, we could be in trouble, but we'll see if they hit the Kumano here. They do, so we'll go ahead and use our Convoke to hit the Bloated Contaminator, which does exile, and then that gets pulled back. So because Slaughter Singer is only a 2/2, we have some ability to play a Swiftspear as well as remove it, and I think that could be very useful here. So let's go ahead and Lightning Strike to get our buff on the Monastery Swiftspear, and we'll attack in for 4. So we have our opponent down to 12. They don't have a board presence. We have a couple combat tricks left into a Contaminator. So this is ooh, do we have lethal here? So we have +3, +4, so 7. We'll get 8, 9, 10, 11. We are very close. And I think it might be worth it to go ahead and Blazing Crescendo. But so we will use this as a combat trick. These are both instants. So we'll see if they want to block here. They do. We'll use Blazing Crescendo. We will trade off the Swiftspear. Ooh. And because we won't be able to play this, and we want to be able to play something next turn, let's go ahead and play an Antagonize on our Phoenix Chick so that our Swiftspear stays around. And so you can see now that we have lethal presented on the board. We have our Stoke the Flames, which can go face 4 damage. We have our Phoenix Chick, which is unblockable through the air. And we have a Swiftspear on the board. And see, that'll go ahead. That'll be game. We'll do 4 damage to face. We'll only pay with mana. And then we will just attack with our Phoenix Chick. And we'll take the game. So good game, Inaka. Playing the Selesnya Toxic deck. Okay, so it looks like we are once again on the draw against Kronos. Ooh, a very mighty opponent indeed. We have a very clear turn 1 play. We have some removal, but it's going to take us a while to get there. I do like having Cavalier, but the lack of a turn 2 is a little concerning for me. But I think with Stoke the Flames, we'll be able to claw our way back. We'll give this a go. I'm not sure this is the smartest idea, but I am not a big fan of mulliganing, especially when our cards are less impactful. Ooh. Tap land from opponent, and we draw a 2-mana spell. Let's go ahead and play Kumano. Deal 1 damage to face, and see what they have for turn 2. Looks like we're playing, as of now, a Mardu. So they have white and red available to them, but they have 2 tap lands. So let's go ahead and continue to bluff mono red. We'll put down a 2/3. Doesn't look like there's any stop from our opponent, so no 1-mana white or red spells. Ooh, Wedding Announcement. So it looks like we have a token deck. And this is somewhere where our Trampler is really going to come in handy, because they can clog the board with a bunch of 1/1s, but we have the ability to go over the top of that. So we will play our Cavalier, attack all. Probably not a good block from opponent. They go down to 11. Now it's possible with a white mana opponent that we could face some board wipes. That could be a little unfortunate. But we are looking at 4 mana, 3 creatures, 3 attackers, 2 defenders. So we know that we're sitting on at least 4 damage. We're presenting 7 at face, and they may want to keep some of their creatures back. Let's see what happens here and who they block. Okay, that's fair. So they're going to take 3 damage, and we don't lose any creatures. And let's go ahead and hold on. We haven't seen any blue mana from them, so we shouldn't be too afraid of getting counterspelled. And we know we have a lot of damage in hand. We'll go ahead, put a counter on Sunrise Cavalier, which, because it flipped from night to day, we didn't play any spells. Ah, well, there we go. So this is actually just fine for us. We'll go face with 4 damage. They will exile our board, but as soon as it hits our turn, we'll go ahead, shoot some more damage to face. And we'll come away with a win against Mardu tokens. GG's Kronos. Ooh, and looks like we're ranking up gold tier 1. Okay, up against Chimera or Chimera. So once again, we have a very nice curve here. Turn 1 Lookout, turn 2 Crescendo, which draws us a card for next turn, as well as a Lightning Strike, and then we have some of our high-end removal. I think this looks great, and going first is a huge boon to our success. So we'll play Plains into a turn 1 Lookout, and see what our opponent is holding up for us. Ooh, black and white, so we can rely on them being pretty removal heavy. We did draw another land, which means that it's likely that if we play Blazing Crescendo, the card that we're going to exile is going to be a playable. And that could either be a permanent or one of our instants, and I think that's probably worthwhile. We'll go ahead and see what we get, and do 4 damage as well. So we have a Lightning Strike at the ready, which is in addition to the one in our hand. This could either be used to remove something that they play on the board or go face. And because they haven't played anything, we're going to go ahead and go face before we lose that card. Do our 1 damage, and then pass the turn. So it looks like we're playing a 5-colored deck. And this could be an Atraxa deck, it could be a Domain deck, and it looks like, because they have tokens out, I would say this is likeliest an Atraxa deck. They're looking to stall the board by popping up tokens, bide their time until they fill out their mana, play their Atraxa, and then they're probably relying on that to get them there. So we have 3 current mana. We could play either of our lands. We have 1 creature with Vigilance, and we have possibly 2 plays here. So I think I would want to play Kumano, and because our Lookout has Vigilance, I want to play the other Mountain so that we can play 3 red costs for this turn. So we'll go ahead and play this out. Deal 1 damage, play the Lookout, and then I think I'll hold up the Stoke the Flames just in case. Just to see if our opponents can give us some more information that might be useful. With blue mana, I'm not entirely sure. They won't have a counterspell, which would be pretty unfortunate because we want our 4 damage to go to face. But they might feel a little bit of pressure here to either remove something or improve their board state. Nothing from opponent yet. We might as well use our turn the way that we know how. So we'll go ahead and cast a Stoke the Flames, see if they have a response from this. They do not. We get our damage in. It looks like we are drawing a few too many lands this turn. Now, we want our opponent, whenever we're at a disadvantage that we know we are at, we want our opponent to think that we are in a stronger position than we are. So holding up mana, taking a little bit more time to think through our turns, and know that we have when Kumano faces Kakkazan, flips another creature on the ground, maybe we can present a stronger front than we really have. So we'll go ahead and we'll attack with the Lookout, just to make them think twice. They're likely to wait to see what kind of card we are going to play until they use their mana. So if they take out the Lookout, I'd be very surprised, but we'll see if we can sneak in 1 damage. And then because we don't really have a whole lot of high cost cards, we're actually going to go ahead and hold on to these 2 lands. Make our opponent think we have some sort of burn that we might fire off at their face. They have a Wandering Emperor. So I'll go ahead and, in case they can hold up some other sort of counterspell next turn, I'm going to go ahead and play a Lightning Strike now. They won't be able to exile any target creature or gain that life. So 2 mana is striking distance for us. There are a lot of burn cards that we have that can take that last bit of life away from them. So we'll see what comes up. Ooh, so Zur Eternal Schemer. This is going to turn all of their non-aura enchantments into a creature with Death Touch, Lifelink, and Hexproof. So they are now going to start gaining some life back. Now the only way we can remove Zur is with a Stoke the Flames, but because we've been sending everything face, this puts us in a pretty bad position. Yeah, so this is the downside of not having a lot of good removal and having a very aggro approach. We can play a lot of creatures very fast, we can send a lot of damage to the face, but if that mid-range control deck can establish enough board presence, gain a little bit of life, and start to take over with card draw, we're pretty much going to be dunzos. So at this point, they have enough card draw, they have enough buffing, they have enough board presence and life gain that we have lost this game. So we're going to go ahead, do our final attack, and then we will concede and go to the next game. We don't want to waste anybody's time, and especially in ranked. If we can give somebody a win a little bit faster than they might expect it, that's not a bad thing. And as you can see, playing 3 games, just 3 games, we hit 20 out of 20 of our dailies, and we got 2 wins in the ranked queue. That is not a bad return for a common and uncommon deck. So let's go back and think about how our deck did. So we faced 3 very different decks. The Toxic deck, the Selesnya, the green, the white Toxic deck, is always going to be a difficult one to face. They can go very, very quickly. They don't have to deal a whole lot of damage. They just have to hit your face with some poison counters. The things that really come in handy there are the amount of removal we have. There are a lot of 1 and 2 power creatures that make their deck tick. Things like our Play with Fires, our Lightning Strikes, our Stoke the Flames are going to be excellent. And even when we have one of those 4/4 creatures come down, if we have Stoke the Flames in hand, that's not the biggest issue for us. We have plenty of flyers to get past them. We have Sunrise Cavalier that can trample over some of their tokens and 1/1s. This is a pretty effective deck against that. Against a controlling mid-range deck, we might not be as quick as we would like if we don't draw into enough of our pump spells. So if you find that you are in the queue and you are playing a deck like this, and you keep barely not making it again, maybe you, as we just did, get the opponent down to 2 life and you can't quite finish the job, maybe you want to take out some of your creatures and add 1 or 2 more Antagonizes or 1 or 2 more Crescendos. Something where you can get in that extra 2 or 3 damage 1 turn earlier. But otherwise, I'm very pleased with how this came out. I think Swooping Lookout is a very excellent card. Vigilance comes in really handy, especially against some of the premier removal like Wandering Emperor, which relies on the creature being tapped. Monastery Swiftspear and the buff that it can get, the prowess, is very, very good. Ambush Paratrooper we didn't really get to play with. And I have a feeling this might not be as effective as just having another Swooping Lookout, so I might go ahead and just make that change. Because we then take our curve a little bit more in the 1 mana route, we might be able to even take out one or two of our mana sources, of our lands. That could open us up to a little bit more removal for those bigger creatures or for the planeswalkers. Something like a destroy effect, like Fateful Absence, could come in handy, and this would also be helpful when you are coming up against those black decks with Shieldreds or things that have 5 toughness. This can also hit planeswalkers. It's a very adaptable removal spell. So this is probably what I would keep this at. 4 Swooping Lookouts, 4 Kumanos, 4 Swiftspears, 4 Phoenix Chicks, 4 Play with Fires. And then we get into the 2 mana curve of some of our removal, some of our combat tricks, and then into our bigger finishers, Sunrise Cavalier, Stoke the Flames. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed this Poor Mana's deck, and I will see you next time.